to the outcome of the Geneva talks now that they're over?
I think where there's talk, there's hope. That's the way I'd like to characterize the summit. I think that the best thing that we've gotten out of the summit is the agreement to meet next year here in the United States and the following year in the Soviet Union. Also, looking at these two gentlemen sitting down talking to each other, I think has introduced a new level of civility in our dealings with one another. I think if we've accomplished anything at this point, we've seen that both countries want restraint, and I think that's an important part of the process. I'm pleased at where we are. I didn't expect that we would do much the first time, and I think we've now set the agenda for some future productive meetings.
Well, some are already saying that the summit was a tactical victory for President Reagan because Mr. Gorbachev left Geneva without any limitation on SDI. Do you agree with that?
Yes, I do. I think that the president was very smart in retaining the trump card, the ace that we have, and that's the Strategic Defense Initiative. There's no doubt in my mind that it was the SDI program that got the Soviets to the talking table and got the summit going. And the fact that we were able to meet without conceding any aspect of that, and the fact that these two gentlemen sat down very civilly talking to each other, and the president came away without having made any concession whatsoever, in fact, having gotten the great concession that we will now meet again next year and the year after, I think was a great stroke of statesmanship on the part of the president.
Do you believe Reagan will be able to translate his summit success into success for his legislative agenda, like tax reform and the balanced budget amendment, which is now pending in conference?
Well, just taking those two, which are great pieces, or big pieces of legislation, I've always said that the #1 issue facing this country is the massive budget deficits and our debt. And I would hope that now that the president is back, we will be able to come up with a Defense Reduction Act. I do believe that we will have a Defense Reduction Act. This country needs it, and hopefully we'll have one very shortly. On tax reform, that's another matter. I am for tax reform, but I'm not necessarily for this tax reform bill. I think there's a lot that we have to look at before we have a tax reform bill that I'm happy with. I'd say at the top of the agenda, I want to see incentives to increase the personal savings rate in this country. You may have seen just a couple of weeks ago that the personal savings rate dropped below 3%. With countries like Japan having much higher rates, I think that's got to be a #1 objective of tax reform. And certainly this bill is not as simple as I'd like to see. And I won't even think about this bill if we don't have a complete concession in the House Ways and Means Committee on the deductibility of state and local income and real estate taxes.
Are you surprised at all by the 4.3% growth in the GNP in the third quarter?
Not really. I think this country has got a lot of growing power left in it. I think the one thing that I've got to show you, I've often thought of this, and I'm delighted to have the opportunity to show this on camera. This is the card that I vote with, and you might say that this is the most powerful credit card in the world, because this is a card that doesn't have any limit. On your credit cards, when you reach that $2,000 or $5,000 limit, that's it. But in government, we can continue to use this and keep voting on programs to go beyond the debt ceiling, and it's time that we got our house in order so that we make sure that we pass on to our kids and grandkids a stronger country and not guarantee them a lower standard of living, which is what I believe we're doing now.
So the bottom line is you think that there will be a Deficit Reduction Act passed this year?
No question. It's just something that has to happen, and I see a bipartisan effort at work, and hopefully we can all agree on a bill that comes out of conference, and it should happen shortly.
Thank you, Congressman.